Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell. You know what time it is. It is 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning, one of my favorite times of the week. It is time for Sales Logic. I'm hanging out here with my partner, Mark Hunter.
Hey, good morning. It's going to be a great show. We're going to be talking about closing strategies to seal the deal. We haven't talked about this in a long time, so it's going to
We
be
haven't, we
really
have not talked about closing in a long time, and I tell you the idea came from the book that we're going to feature
yes.
today. So, all right, let's go ahead and rock and roll. I'm just throwing different videos up every single week. We have so many opportunities out there. All right. Now, before we dive into the show, before Mark really dives into the details of what we're going to cover, I like to tell you how the show works. Every week we start off a question from you, the audience. That's right. We feature you right here on Sales Logic. Never forget, if you've got a question, anything that would be of value to you, send it to us here at Sales Logic. We will feature you, answer your question. We cover a hot topic, recommend a book, and because we want you to leave with return on investment, we have a lightning round. All right, Mark, let's dive in.
Okay, so the topic is closing strategies to seal the deal. The question to us comes from Ron in Salt Lake. He says, I want to increase my closing ratio. It's not bad, but I think I can do better, be more effective. Do you have strategies and ideas? So what did I do? I put it in the
Put it
sales.
in the Sales Logic brain.
Of course I did. Of course I did. And hey, the Sales Logic brain came back with a number of different things. It says, hey, understand better customer priorities. 2, qualify your prospects better. Sell risk and value. Have confidence in pricing. Pipeline management. Follow up. Even after you think you've lost the sale, follow up again to reach back out to them. Customer testimonials and referrals. Continuous learning, a whole assortment of things from the Sales Logic brain. And in fact, we should say that, hey, we now have the sales intel, the Sales Logic Intel tool in there. That is a terrific tool. We just got added into the mastermind group. So if you're part of the mastermind group, you're buzzing because you got new tools to work with.
Yeah, I love this topic of closing. I'm right with you, Natalie. I think it is such an important topic. But here I'm going to be harsh. I'm going to be harsh because I want to empower you. If you are not closing sales, realize it's your fault. And I say that because what I want you to do is go back and analyze where you're missing in the sales process. Because number one, this is a Mark Hunter area of expertise far more than mine. But if you're not closing the deal, something's wrong with the prospect you chose. Like you're missing, you probably, I mean, Mark, I think you're famous for saying you've got to close the sale right at the beginning of the sale. Is that not correct?
Yes, I see. If you're not closing the sales because you're opening it wrong, it's not that you have a closing problem. You have an opening problem. And this is where so many salespeople get it wrong because they focus. I hear this all the time from VPs of sale. Oh, we have a closing problem. No, you don't. You have a prospecting problem. You are
Yeah.
not spending time with the right prospects. Ron, your challenge, your question you got to ask yourself, have I clearly identified who my prospect is? And am I spending enough time with them to truly understand? We go slow at the beginning to close fast at the end. Too many salespeople miss that. They
Yeah.
want to go fast to the close.
So well said. So here's, Mark just mentioned a moment, and I know Natalie's already been playing around with it in the Sales Logic Mastermind, but now we have in there the Sales Logic Intel engine. Now, this has been a game changer for me in choosing deals because I use the Intel engine. It's one of the most powerful prospecting tools out there, developed by Sam Richter. But you use the prospecting tool to really help you choose better prospects. And if you want to increase your closing ratio, ask yourself, have I clearly defined my target market? The second is, are you qualifying prospects to continue to call on them? Because if you're not closing deals, I'm going to tell you, you got junk in your pipeline.
Well, this is so true because what you got to sit there and ask yourself is, am I allowing anything and everything to be in my pipeline? And just as the customer is qualifying you, you have to qualify the customer as to whether or not they deserve your time. And this is so key because, again, if you're not tight, yesterday I had a call with one of our mastermind members, and we were talking about just this in terms of stay absolutely tight. So, whatever you learn, the concepts, the ideas, the strategies you learn from one prospect, you can apply to another one because they're literally identically the same. Stay tight, stay very specific.
Yeah, I love what Bryn, this is exactly where I was going next, and I love what you're saying. Bryn Tillman, if you do not follow Bryn Tillman, you need to follow Bryn Tillman. But she says the sale will close when we master the ask offer ratio, gap selling, according to Keenan. We are asking for money, resources, and time as salespeople. That is what we are asking for in exchange for our solution. If our solution has more value than what we're asking for, the deal will close. And that is spot on.
See, I'm going to take that a step further. And what we're doing is we're asking the customer to invest. We are not asking them to buy. We're not selling anything. We are asking the customer to invest in it because there is an ROI. Nobody buys anything just for the sake of buying some, unless they're Girl Scout cookies. Then I know you don't buy Girl Scout cookies. I buy Girl Scout cookies.
I was the number one Girl Scout cookie salesperson, though, for 4 years running when I was a Girl Scout.
That doesn't surprise me. Who would turn down even Mare when she was 10 years old buying cookies? Here's the deal. We invest in things because we want a return on investment. And this is where salespeople get it wrong. They are not laying out a value proposition because when the customer doesn't buy, it's not, it is our fault because we failed to create enough value for the customer to sit there and say, this makes absolute sense. Remember, the number one competitor we go up against is no decision. The customer chooses to make no decision. That is an indictment on us as salespeople.
Yeah. I lost a deal this week. I got the message across that said that they decided that they didn't have enough budget for an outside speaker. And when you look at that, you can go, well, why they even waste my time or anything like that? But I missed all the qualifying opportunities. I mean, what a bad sales call I had right from the beginning. I got an inquiry, I reached out, but somewhere in my questioning process, I missed whatever I needed to identify to determine. And it really wasn't budget because you always have enough budget. You always have enough budget. I just didn't show enough value as to what a non-industry speaker could bring that it was worth giving up cheesecake for dessert or the extra flower arrangement in the middle of the table. I didn't get my point across. So what I want you to understand about closing a deal is that, and the reason I want you to understand it's your fault is don't beat yourself up from it. When you lose, analyze and learn. Like something isn't good enough in my sales process and I need to fix that.
You said something that was absolutely powerful. You said budget is never the issue.
Never.
It is never the issue. The only time it's an issue is when you're dealing with the wrong person because you're dealing with somebody so low in the organization. And budget does not create a problem if you have the value put out on the table. And that's one of the big issues because we're not spending enough time listening to the customer, letting them share with us what are their challenges. And we as salespeople, then putting it back into, and I hate to say this, but creating it back into a sense of urgency, tying it to dollars, tying it to time, tying it to situations that say, you've got to close that now, because if you don't close it now, it's going to create more problems for you downstream.
Yeah, I would also say budget is never an issue, even when you are talking to the right person. I was on last week with somebody and I was inquiring. I wanted to buy a product and I was surprised at how big the price tag was. I wasn't expecting that. And so as salespeople, I think sometimes we need to understand that, maybe in our customer's mind, they thought this was going to cost X and we come in at twice that. And but as I went through the conversation, and the salesperson was really good. I mean, really understood where my biggest pains were. when we got to the point of signing on the dotted line, I didn't have an issue because I think I'm going to recoup more than my investment with what I'm spending them. But it reminds me a lot of when my husband first got into really high end cosmetic dentistry, and people would come in and they would need a complete overhaul. They came into the dentist office expecting to spend $1,500, and now they get a case quoted at them at 50. You got to realize, as a salesperson, you got to be in a position to help people understand why spending that amount of money is more than worth it for them. And so again, if you lose or you lost on price, if your closing ratio isn't where it needs to be, go back and analyze where it's breaking down. Stacy, we are thrilled to have you here. Thanks so much.
Hey, and this goes back to really the beginning of the sales call. I've got to take time to understand what is the need that the customer has. Salespeople are so guilty of assumptive selling. Assumptive selling, what is that? That's where we just assume this is what the customer is looking for. No, it's not. And remember, the customer is not buying a drill. They're buying a hole. No, they're not buying a hole. They want to hang a picture. That's what they're looking for. We've got to go downstream enough to truly understand what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think the other piece too that is so important when you lose a deal is even go back and interview the customer. I mean, if your closing ratio isn't where it needs to be, you can go back and ask those customers and say, look, I really want to understand, what made you make this decision, so I can understand a little bit where the process is going. If I want you all to take anything from this morning, your sales process, the process that you use to sell, it is never good enough. You always have to be perfecting it and always have to be getting at it. And if you think that price is an issue in sales, watch your own buying behavior. Because when you are the right prospect, I look at people, other than tennis, I don't follow professional sports. I follow a little bit of golf, but I don't enjoy watching golf as much as I like playing golf. But I would pay a lot of money to go to a tennis tournament or to go to the Ryder Cup or to go to the Masters or something like that. I would never pay any money at all to go to I wouldn't pay money to go to the Super Bowl, but there are people that would never ever spend money on an expensive dinner or buy a heavy piece of equipment who would take a year's salary to go to the Super Bowl. You got to know who you're talking to. That's really, really important, because everybody will pay a ridiculous amount of money for something that they value.
This comes back to the qualification process.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to understand where you're going. So please take away from this, it's not a closing problem. It is an opening problem. Because here's the situation. If I open right, I close the sale. And you know what I do? I create the next sale. Because my whole objective is not to close deals. My objective is to open relationships. Because if I do a great job of understanding your needs, if I do a great job, for instance, if I know that what you're looking for are absolute unbelievable seats to the US Open, which you attended a year ago,
yeah,
and you sit there and say, hey, okay, I'm going to get you great seats. Then I understand, okay, you know what? Next year, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing. And we open a relationship. This is what makes the investment in time in prospecting worthwhile.
Yeah, I would also say that once you get the prospect right, you can still miss closing the sale. Because believe me, I've done it a million times. And where you broke down was in your questioning. Mark said something about the assumptive sale. And I think where salespeople miss is we don't dive deep enough to understand what is the biggest pain that somebody will pay for. And that pain may not be aligned with what you think is the biggest pain. Let me give you an example. This year, I've closed the biggest contract I've ever closed in my business. Now, when I look at the company that I closed this contract for, their biggest pain is not what the CEO thinks is the biggest pain. In fact, if I didn't solve his biggest pain, the company will be fine. But if I don't solve this other one, the company's in trouble. But when I wrote the contract and when I put the proposal together, I spoke to his biggest fear first. That is the first part in the proposal. It is the first deliverable. And that is what got the price tag, because it is what is keeping him up at night and what he is afraid of. And if you don't solve that urgent need, people can't hear you for everything else.
It's so powerful what you just said. And let's run this scenario. We have to make sure that when we are putting the proposal on the table, we are recapping what are the needs we're solving? What are the issues we're solving? Here's where we're going with this. Never put a proposal on the table until the customer is leaning in. Too many times what happens is we put the proposal on the table when the customer's leaning back. And they're saying, oh, just show me what you got. No, that's not good enough. I want it when they're leaning in because they're saying, I've got this issue. And you are the only one who can help me with it. I'm leaning in and I'm absolutely determined to get this solved because you're going to help me. That's when you put the proposal on the table. But you always wrap it around the need, the issue, the problem you're going to solve for them. And when you do that, it's amazing at how your close ratio will change.
Yeah, I love what Simon is saying here. Thanks so much for jumping in. He actually uses a model to help predict what's slowing down the closing process for the client, therefore creating a closing strategy. I mean, that is so smart. I mean, really, I always say you're your best sales coach. Jump in and really learn from yourself. I think another thing that can close the sales ratio down is that something bigger happened. Even when I have identified a really big problem, a really urgent need, if their biggest customer just came in with a huge order, if two of their best employees just quit, if their kid got 3 consecutive D's on the report card or got caught doing something bad at school and got kicked out, that whoever that decision maker is now distracted. And when that decision maker, I'll give you a great example. I've been trying to close a deal for 8 months. And the CEO of the company, the decision maker I'm working with, lost their CFO. And they have been struggling. They have tried 3 CFOs to try to replace, and nothing has worked out. And therefore, what we're talking about pales in comparison to that crisis. So I've got to back up. Simon, you gave such great language to this. Now I need to back up and decide what my closing strategy is, because I can't push right now, but I need to stay in the game. I can't push because understandably, this is so not about me right now, but I need to stay in there. So when the opportunity to close is there, we can do it.
That brings up a great point, because this is why, we talk about going slow, but you can go so slow that the world changes and the customer has a different set of priorities. So when you're going slow, I got to make sure that I'm taking a 360 perspective of the customer. I'm understanding the customer, because here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the pain and the need that they have. I want to draw that out. I want to understand that. And that's what you were doing. Unfortunately, CFO changed, so their priorities change. What I want to do is, it's not a need unless the customer talks about it twice. If the customer talks about it twice, now it says, I've got an issue. So for those of you who are in more complex sales and are you hearing the same issue time and time again on different meetings, different calls? Are you hearing it from different people, the same challenge? It's so critical, because it's going to help you understand what is the depth and the size. But here's the key thing. You got to listen for those little signals. Listen for those little signals that something's about to change. And this is why I say you got to have a 360 perspective. The bigger the sale, the more relationships you have to have with that customer.
Yeah, I love what she said. When you write up the proposal, literally include, this is what I heard. I mean, what a powerful statement, because first of all, the person knows that you were listening and that you heard them, and they feel validated. The second is that when it is what you heard, it's a struggle for them to disagree, because that is what they are telling you, is the biggest problem. So, again, what I want you to leave with today, and what I think is really important, is do, like, when things are not closing, it means something's wrong in the process. And you know what? You may be using the exact same process you used 6 months ago, but it isn't working right now. Think about how the marketplace is shifting. I mean, inflation is getting really high. The Fed just said they may cut once this year. There's experts out there saying they won't cut at all this year. Everything that's moving in the marketplace is starting to stall it a little bit. And when that starts to stall, it will impact our closing ratios. Doesn't have to be a negative impact. It just means we need to rework the strategy a little bit because the forces in the marketplace are changing. And when the forces in the marketplace change, you've got to do things a little bit differently.
Oh, that's so true, because every election year we see this. We see this slowing of the decision-making process, and it's magnified because of inflationary times, because of all these other issues. And this means we have to be even more focused in on the critical need and how do we tie that back to, and I like tie it back to on ROI. If you don't make it this decision, this is going to prevent you from doing this, this, and this. And you have to draw that out very quickly. Hey, time is racing past. Wow, this is great. Hey, the book, James Muir, our good friend, who's been quiet for the last 2 years.
Yes. What a powerful voice in the sales industry. And James has been really quiet. I'm on the road today. I don't have a copy of the book with me, but I believe it is called Unsticking Deals, correct?
Yes, it is. I don't have my copy yet. It's sitting in the post office waiting for me to pick it up. But I'll tell you what, he's been silent because this book is good. So you got to pick it up, got to grab it. We'll put a link in the show notes for you. Are you ready for the lightning round?
I am.
Hey, the lightning round also includes making sure everybody goes out and checks out saleslogicpodcast.com and the mastermind, because with the new Intel engine and the brain, boy, mastermind group is more powerful than ever. Anyway, lightning round. Top 10 ways you know it's time to fire your salesperson.
Number one, they are underperforming. May be the very first clue.
2, looking at their calendar, looking at the number of contacts. Are they meeting the metrics that you've set forth for them?
Yeah. Number 3, they don't have a behavior strategy. They don't have a set of actions they are taking on a regular basis.
Number 4, it's their attitude with other people on the team, because again, you can't afford to have a bad apple on your team, period.
Number 5, I would say it may be time to fire your salesperson if they won't learn, if they won't do things differently.
Number 6, what are the numbers that they're creating, and are they making the right calls with the right people? And what's the comments you're hearing back from those customers?
Yeah. Number 7, I would say it might be time to fire your salesperson if your salesperson doesn't understand your target and who you're going after. They're still calling on the same customers they were calling on from their previous employer.
This is so basic, but are they failing to show up for your meetings, for your calls? Because if they're failing to show up, or they show up late for your stuff, you know what? They're doing the same thing with customers.
Yeah, Bryn just put in a great one. I'll go ahead and add and said that your salespeople are defensive rather than receptive. Such a great one.
I love that, because again, if they're taking the side of the customer, and hey, I love to support the customer, but if they're saying we're totally screwed up, we're totally ain't happening. Hey, with that, we want to say thank you for listening to Sales Logic this week. If you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. Something we've said has earned you $1. Hey, consider telling a friend about our show, because it's how we grow when we help you grow. I'm Mark Hunter.
And I'm Meridith Elliott Powell.
Remember, when you sell with confidence and integrity,
all of this uncertainty suddenly becomes your competitive advantage.
And the sale becomes logical.
All right, guys, we will see you right back here next week for another quick episode of Sales Logic and all the strategies that you need to really sell more effectively. Big takeaway from today's sales process, today's show, we can all increase our closing ratio by analyzing our own process. Please check out the Sales Logic Mastermind. This Intel engine that has been added is incredible. But remember, send your questions to saleslogicpodcast.com. We'll see you right back here, 8 a.m. Eastern, next Saturday morning.